Hi, everyone. My name is Caylee Lewis, and I did my internship in my last semester as a marriage and family studies major at the Nampa Family Justice Center, and that's in Nampa, Idaho, kind of the Boise, Idaho area in county. So, what is the Nampa Family Justice Center? So, our mission statement is to promote safety, self-sufficiency, hope, and healing to those affected by abuse. So our center, located in downtown Nampa, is a multi-agency center. So we have the Family Justice Center Victim Advocates, which is what I do. We also have Idaho Legal Aid, which is an organization that takes on pro bono cases, specifically those that are high risk, where there is a lot of abuse happening, whether that be child abuse or domestic abuse. And they handle things like custody, guardianship, and divorce. So they're housed in our center as well. We have a couple attorneys, the Nampa PD detectives and victim witness coordinators. So we have a couple of officers down there, but most of them are the detectives with the, what is it called? The person crime unit. And so they're the ones that are going to the calls, obviously, and working on the criminal cases. So we work with them and their victim witness coordinators. We share the same clients. We also have adult protective services because we also serve victims of elder abuse and vulnerable adults. And so they're housed at our center, as well as CPS and health and welfare, and probation and parole. And CARES by St. Luke's, which is a children at risk evaluation services. They come to our center 3 or 4 times a week, and they schedule appointments with families that have children that have disclosed abuse of some sort to somebody to do an interview that's recorded, do a medical exam, to be able to go further in the criminal process of that proceeding, as well as to determine if the child should stay in health and welfare custody or go to parents. And we also we also have sexual assault advocates who go out when those who have been raped or sexually assaulted go to hospitals to do STD testing. We also have an advocate that gets called, and they go and support the person there. So the 6 populations that we serve at our center are victims of domestic abuse, child abuse, elder abuse, human trafficking, and sexual assault. So while we see a lot of these victims of these different populations coming in after their crisis, say the day they leave their abusive husband, they're driving over to our center to get help and restart. But oftentimes it might be somebody who experienced a sexual assault a couple of years ago, and they're realizing that they still need help. And so then we can provide that help. So it's anyone that's been a victim of abuse at any point in time, even if they're a 60-year-old and they were sexually abused as a child, we still provide services to them as long as they are a victim. Okay, so how I found the internship. So I found about this internship because my uncle, he also graduated from BYU, Idaho with a marriage and family studies major, and he has been working for the Nampa Police Department as a victim witness coordinator for since he graduated, for like 5 years now, and he loves it. And they had an opening for the court advocacy, and so I applied for the job, but I was also able to get it approved as my internship, and so I'll continue working for the city of Nampa after I graduate as well. So I hired to be a court advocate. So in Idaho, we use the term civil protection order. Some states, I think California, like it's called a restraining order, but pretty much like the court ordering someone to stay away. So in court, I assist those who are coming to stand before the judge in front of their abuser or stalker and ask the judge and testify and go to hearing. And then the judge will then decide, after speaking to both parties, if the person is in need of protection. So I help them at the center fill out their protection order, get it filed, prepare their testimony. Because once we're in the courthouse before the judge, because I'm an advocate, I can't speak for them. I can only sit with them. So I'm really there for the before and after, and just sit there with them during it so they don't feel alone. Because a lot of times it's women or victims of abuse who are standing up to their abuser for the first time and openly disclosing to another person the things that have happened in the relationship. So it can be really intimidating. So before, we're helping them fill out the paperwork, safety plan, and then after, if it's granted, it's getting them set up with counseling, continuing to safety plan, helping them get divorce and custody filed, and things like that. It's just, I have to work really hard to not give legal advice because I'm an advocate. I don't have a law degree. So it's kind of tricky to work in the courts, but it's mostly there. So they have a friendly face that they've worked with at the center, but they're also meeting with that court to walk through the whole While I was hired as a court advocate, there's been a much higher demand with the child advocacy that we've seen in Nampa. So my role is when a child comes in for their CARES interview and medical examination, to just make the child as comfortable as possible. Typically they're coming so the police can pretty much get on record a disclosure. And then also we have a doctor who is certified in child abuse and abuse pediatrics. Can't remember what it's called, and he does the medical exam. So it's a really intimidating and really scary thing for kids to experience. So our goal is to just make them feel as comfortable as possible. We give them toys and snacks and try to introduce them to all the faces because there's several people involved. Just make them feel comfortable. Then while the child is back being interviewed and being examined by the doctor, it is my role to sit with parents and complete what's called the psychosocial, which is pretty much just to discuss what the child's behavior has been like since the abuse began. A lot of times this is things like wetting the bed or performing poorly in school, or sometimes mimicking the abuse then on a sibling, becoming more violent or sexual. So those are things that we discuss with the parent and then point them in resources where they can go to, whether that be a doctor or a counselor, or working with the school, just to ensure that the child is able to begin to heal, that, you know, if it's an abuser who they need to be protected from, to get a protection order, anything to really help the parent navigate this, but mostly to help the child heal. So I feel like I've benefited greatly from working here so far, mostly because I had never been in a courtroom before, and now that's where I spend the majority of my time. And also because I feel like I've lived in a bubble, even though I grew up in this area. I didn't realize how frequent abuse, assaults, and even sex trafficking happens in our little community here, but I've realized that it's way more often than I thought. And it's even more sad when I see people that I know and people that I've grown up with that are receiving help, because I always just assumed that everyone had a life free of abuse, and that's not the case. And so it's been really helpful for me to have empathy and understanding for victims, especially I always wondered why victims could never leave the abuser, why it took long. But on average, it takes a woman, a victim, up to 7 times leaving their abuser to actually leave for the final and last time. And so I've also learned a lot about the importance of teaching healthy relationship patterns and behaviors at a young age, because oftentimes, as we know, abusers were victims at one point themselves, and then they become perpetrators. Some of them do. And something that I really love about the center is that they not only have support groups for victims of abuse and sexual assault, but there's also teen groups. So teens who have experienced abuse learn about the cycle of abuse. They learn about healthy relationships. They learn about what should happen in a relationship and shouldn't, in order to stop that abusive cycle from continuing. Because that's the hope. If the cycle doesn't end, then there will always be victims. So I've seen several connections between my education at BYU Idaho and my internship, but there were 2 that were really key, especially this last semester, because I was taking both these courses. One of them was the helping relationship, and this course by far has been the most beneficial class I've ever taken. It kind of goes through how to be an active listener, to be intentional, and to be able to validate someone while still being able to walk them through, to help them walk them through that process. And so a lot of times people walk into our center and they are in crisis, or they show up to court and they want to tell me like this whole story about what has just happened to them. And while it's so important, there's also, typically in court, we're on a time crunch. And so I've been able to learn how to validate them, let them feel, kind of escalate them from the crisis mode that they're in, let them feel heard, and then kind of guide them like that's important, but what we have to do is this, and we have to do it now. So being able to build that trust and be able to listen to them, and then help them figure out what it is that they need to do, because at the end of the day, it has to be their choice. We can't fix anything for them. And then the other course that has had a huge connection is the family and community relationships. I didn't realize how many resources our community had until now I'm offering those resources to others. And that's things like food pantries and shelters, and there's just so many organizations. Like there's Bikers Against Child Abuse. There's just different organizations, especially for children, to help out parents who maybe feel like they're not able to parent at that moment. And there's crisis centers that you can call and someone will come and pick you up and take you to a place where you can stay for 23 hours, talk to a counselor. This is for people that are suicidal. Just the amount of help that can be found if someone is able to reach out and able to do the work with the help that we provide. I didn't realize that the only safe house in the state of Idaho for trafficking victims is also in our area as well. And so there's so many things that I realized the community has come together. You just have to go and look for it, and how important it is. Because we're working with so many agencies, it's so much more effective when you have, when everyone is on the same page. So because we're all in the same building, if a detective is working on a case where the child's been taken and is in CPS custody, and we have an advocate who's working with them, those three people are all in the same building. And so if there is something that needs to be addressed, if there's information that one person finds out that they don't know, it's so easy to just have that communication. And so as the community comes together and these agencies come together, in the end, it benefits the family more. And it's just way more effective. So I have having my time at the center as my internship, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity I have to keep working there and to kind of grow and expand, working outside of just the courts, but continuing in the child advocacy and the stalking realm as well. There's such a need for these populations in my area, in the Boise area, but everywhere that I've learned. And so everyone is welcomed with open arms. It's an awesome community. Everyone is in it for the same purpose, and it's to help people. There's not any other motive behind the people that are there. And it's just a great place to learn from. There's so many educational opportunities, so many trainings. And again, there are so many resources that our center offers that it's just insane the amount of help that people can get. And the point of having our center is so that they only have to go to one place to get it. They're working with one advocate, and the advocate is the one that is kind of pulling everything in. And so this person that's in crisis doesn't have to go to 10 different places and call 10 different people. And there's also incredible leaders. The woman who started the Family Justice Center, she was a female cop. She just retired a couple of years ago, but she was a female detective back in the 80s and just had a huge passion for, she just saw too many victims of domestic abuse being killed and wanted to do something about it. And she has a huge vision for where the center is going to go eventually, and it's still growing. And the mayor is also oversees the whole center, and she is incredibly supportive and helping the victims in our community as well. So it is a great place to be. If you're looking for an opportunity to volunteer or do your internship at the Family Justice Center, our director's name is Jeannie, and this is her email address, and she's really good at getting back to people. So that is that was my internship experience, and it's been really amazing, and I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had to learn from it and to be able to help couples and families and victims as well as children.